I've had a few students asking me, what should our early sketches, basically the first iteration of what you'll show the client, look like? As usual, there is no single method, but a pretty wide spectrum where each option is actually pretty okay. I'll try to walk you through the process of identifying what will seem to be the best fit for you so that you know what to do next. Mainly depends on your process and how you want to keep it. How long do you want to spend on a contract? Is a contract a few days or 2 weeks? If it's that long, then you have time to take your time. How many images are you intending to produce for this first round? If you want to produce 20 images for the first round, it will be hard to push very advanced sketches and would basically be a waste of time. Your relationship with the client. Is it a new client or an old one? And what are their expectations regarding the first round? The number of reviews you're doing. If you have a few rounds, it means you have to move forward faster. So it's generally better to have more advanced sketches early in the process. Your speed of production. Basically, you can't expect to do advanced sketches if it takes you several days to produce them. This just wouldn't be practical nor efficient. If, for instance, you only offer 2 rounds of revision to your client, having the first round of revision done on a clay render will be a bit weird. On the other hand, if you offer 15 rounds of revision, having an almost final renderings on the first round will also be perceived as weird. If you're slow and it takes you a lot of time to produce decent looking images, your client will also feel a bit weird if you send them nothing back to them for several days. Generally speaking, clients are used to a bit of back and forth on a very regular basis. Let's take both ends of the spectrum and weigh the pros and cons. Here are some examples of what I would call simple sketches, clay renderings of a model that is already decently detailed. You have some vegetation, proper light, etc. In terms of pros, first important pros is that it's very fast to produce, which is nice for you. You can also produce more options because they don't need to be too refined. Also, the abstraction keeps imagination more open for the evolution of the image in the subsequent rounds. For the cons, clay renderings are less impactful because, well, they are more abstract. They can also sometimes be a bit scary for clients that can't project themselves. They will often require more explanation and interaction in order for the client to understand what would the final image look like. Now, what about advanced sketches? Advanced sketches are, well, more advanced. They are textured, have already some sense of entourage and animation, and are actually very close to the final look. For the pros, logically, advanced sketches are more impactful. The client will generally quickly focus on other topics, although you should make sure they agree on everything before letting them wander. It can also signal expertise and efficiency by showing you're able to deliver high quality quickly, and therefore justify your pricing more easily. Advanced sketches are especially useful on projects with tight deadlines. Regarding the cons, producing advanced sketches take usually a bit more time. It's all down to how good you are at producing good 3D quickly and photoshopping properly quickly. It basically requires a bit of extra upfront work to think things further. It can be a waste of time if none of your options are taken, and that can happen if you didn't do the interview process properly in the first time, or if your client is just too undecided. Also, for some views, typically aerials, it can require quite a bit of time to produce, with no certainty of getting chosen and pushed further. What I do lately is I tend to oscillate between advanced clay renderings, like the ones presented earlier, and more advanced sketches. It actually depends on the client because with some, I just have a habit of working a certain way because I used to only do clay in the past, and the type of projects that sometimes call for a more direct and evocative approach. What I'm moving towards, though, now with the evolution of hardware and software and the optimization and automation of my process, it is now very easy to do a very advanced draft in terms of assets, lights, and textures at a fraction of the time it used to take. Add AI implementation on top of that in your post-processing, and you can create very cool sketches in no time. So I tend to gravitate more and more towards advanced sketches as a first round, where I set up more precisely the mood, color palettes, framing, and type of animation. How to know what you should do? Basically, just try and let your clients know in advance what to expect on the first draft, simple or advanced sketches. Do what you're comfortable with. This is important because you don't want to stress yourself by setting expectations that your client doesn't even necessarily have. So if you want to go through simple steps with rough sketches, just do that and explain the process to your client. If you're slow, go with simpler draft and take the time to talk with your clients. If you see that they don't like it, it's alright because the second round of draft will be textured and more precise anyway. So worst case scenario, we've just wasted a short meeting with client. And don't be psycho-rigid about your workflow. It's good to have a strong process, but it's also good to be flexible and sometimes do one way, sometimes do the other way. Just keep it consistent for one client so that they don't get lost if they work several times with you. If you tend to have different processes, just make sure to keep it consistent between clients. You don't want to suddenly force a new process on a client where you used to be doing it differently. If you want to homogenize your workflow, do at least give a heads up to your client by telling them how it's going to be this time, why you changed your workflow, and in what way it is better. But if you have a specific way of working or a specific way you would like to work and be able to implement, try to optimize everything so that it becomes a standard for you.